Run Max through any of the methods that you would use to launch any application file or program file. When Max loads, it will show you the console window, which it will use to send you any error messages or status updates about the objects that you've loaded. Then open the demo assignment patch using any technique you like to use to open a file within a program. Then click the Unlock button in your patcher window. This unlocks the patch so that you can edit the objects inside, as opposed to interacting with them as a user. We'll do that later. Along the top is a palette of different kinds of objects that you can use in your patch. The most general kind is just called the object. Click it and it will create a new empty object in the middle of your patcher. Also notice that the keyboard shortcut N for new object will also create a new object for you whenever you need it. Similarly, when we need a message box, we could click up here or use the M key for message. And there are also comment boxes, as well as some interface objects like toggles, buttons that send instantaneous bang messages, and various ways to view numbers. So I'm going to create a new object and start creating my program. I'll type the object name and the arguments, just following along to recreate the example that was provided. You might like to turn on the Snap to Grid option or any of the other options to suit your programming preferences. Next, I'll create a toggle switch to connect to the Metro object, and then I'll drag to connect a patch cord. Notice that when I hover over each inlet and outlet, it tells me something about what's expected to come into that inlet or come out of that outlet and how it's meant to be used. Whenever you're done creating, editing, or connecting an object, you can click a blank space in the patcher window to deselect everything and start creating something else. Next, I'll create a comment box. This is not program code, this is just information for me or for the user. So I'm going to create an on-off label for the toggle that I created. I'm also going to use the fix width feature to shrink the comment box down to the size of the text. Don't forget to create a comment box that has your name or your pseudonym for your videos and place it prominently. Now I'll continue building my patch to match the example that was provided. If you make a mistake while connecting objects, you can click on the patch cord to highlight it and then click the delete button, or you might also use the program's undo feature. Now this label says rate for the sake of brevity. Really, I would call it an inter-onset interval. It's going to be setting the time between note beginnings. This button object will send a bang out whenever I click on it, or whenever it receives a bang, it will light up. Now I'm going to pause a moment and test my patch. I'll lock the patcher so that I can interact with it as a user. And now when I click the toggle, it turns on the metronome and I can see the button below it flashing. I can also use an integer number box to show me numbers being sent out of the random object. And in this number box, I can either type a new value in and hit enter to trigger it, or I can click on the number box and drag it up and down to increment or decrement the value. So you see the rate message is actually setting the maximum time between bangs. Okay, I'll go on building the patch just like it's shown. When you create the cycle tilde object, don't forget to use that tilde symbol. It's part of its name. On most keyboards, the tilde symbol is in the upper left-hand corner of your keyboard, and you'll need the shift key in order to trigger it. Most objects that handle audio processing have that tilde at the end of the name to remind you that you're dealing with sound waves. Also notice that the patch cords that are sending audio signals look different. I'm going to create a message box to format messages that I send to the line tilde object. Line tilde will connect the dots, so to say, or create a breakpoint function. So what I need to give it is the x and y coordinates of this breakpoint function. And in our case, it's going to be fading up the volume, that multiply box, up and down over time. So each pair of numbers represents the amplitude, the loudness, and the second in each pair represents the amount of time to get there. So in this case, every time this message is banged, it will be sent into the line tilde object, and it will go up to 1, meaning full volume, over 10 milliseconds, very fast, and then it will fade down to 0 over 300 milliseconds. The DAC object represents getting sound out of my software and into the computer's audio hardware. And now it's time to test my patch. I'll lock my patcher so I can interact with it as a user instead of an editor. And in the lower right-hand corner of the window, I will click the button to turn audio processing on. I won't hear anything until I do that. If your microphone and speakers don't seem to be working right, go to the Options menu and select Audio Status. Check the input device and output device. Now notice that the notes will start and stop when I turn the metronome on and off. And the rate, or the inter-onset interval, or really the maximum inter-onset interval, will change according to how I change the number. And then I'll consult my checklist one more time. In this case, the toggle box under the checklist is just there as a visual element. It's not connected to the program in any way. Then I'll click the button to start recording the screen. This will be recording what I'm ultimately going to upload and submit as my assignment. And as soon as I click that, it'll ask me for a file name. And be sure you remember what you named the file and also where you put it, what folder the file is stored in. It'll start recording as soon as you click Save. There's an option if I want to record the mic as well. And there's a level meter that will show the level of the mic signal coming in. Note that you won't hear anything through the microphone unless you include it in part of your program. This allows you to talk over your program without having it create a feedback loop with the speakers. In this case, we won't need to use the mic. And so now for my video, I'll turn my metronome on. Show that it works to turn it on and off like expected. Then I'll manipulate the rate control. Negative numbers aren't a good idea, so try to avoid those. And then I'll turn it off and I'll stop my video. Notice there's a clock in the lower left-hand corner that helps you keep track of how long your video is. Don't forget to save your work. And then you can close your patcher. Next, I'm going to upload my video to my YouTube account. Don't forget to check your video before you upload it to make sure the sound and the graphics are working right and that you did everything that needs to be shown in the checklist. If you like, you can set your video to unlisted instead of public. Don't set it to private though. That means only you will be able to see it, and I can't log in as you to grade your work. So either public or unlisted is fine. Give the video a brief descriptive name, and for future assignments you'll need to include some text in the description field describing something about the extra feature you've added and the performance that you created with it. Follow the prompts to finish uploading. And then notice the URL that leads to your video. Copy that using your favorite method. Don't forget to check that URL and make sure it's loading properly. Then we can go to eCampus. And from the home page, we can click on Course Materials in the left sidebar, open the assignment, and then all you need to submit is that URL to your video that demonstrates your patch working properly. Use the text submission section, or the Write Submission button up here. The comment section down here seems like it's all ready to use, but that information ends up going into the wrong place and it's more difficult to deal with. So click Write Submission. Use your favorite method to paste in the URL. And then click Submit and look for confirmation from eCampus that it has received and completed your submission.